Good evening, everyone. The circuit Ricardo Tormo was built relatively recently in the grand scheme of FIA graded race circuits. When you think back to when it first broke ground in 1998, yours truly had only just been able to get past the fact that I didn't need to have assistance walking round anymore, or the fact that I would have been 3. And nowadays, the Ricardo Tormo race circuit has since then evolved into being one of the staples of the motorsport world. It's been hosting the Valencian Grand Prix for the MotoGP Championship for nearly 25 years, and it also has played host to the World Touring Car Championship, to the DTM, and has since become the main test event area for Formula E, which is quite a boon considering they used to race around Donington Park in those cold early Februaries. Clearly the Formula E candidates decided they wanted to somewhere a little bit more warmer. The circuit itself is located just 5 kilometres from the Chest region in Spain, and some of you might be thinking, well, what's that got to do with anything? Well, Chest, funnily enough, as a municipality in the Valencia region, actually comes after a hoard of gold that was found in the 19th century. And when they did a bit of dating, they found out that the coins themselves were from the Roman Empire 300 years before Christ was born. And while some people will swear to a higher power and a bigger deity, the championship is rolling on to decide who will be swearing at the top of their voice if they win the championship crown next week at the Nordschleife. But tonight, it's round 14 here at Valencia, at the Circuit Ricardo Tormo, this wonderful racetrack that has been around, as I said earlier, for over 25 years. I'm Jack Millington, your commentator, as always, for ACC Race Nation, the Season 11 GT3 Challenge Series. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be commentating, and I really am a big fan of this circuit. It's technical, it's difficult, it will put the drivers on edge if they get a line wrong. It's very easy to do so thanks to the raised curbs that are around this circuit, and the fact that this track, in all seriousness, was more modelled for single motorbike racing. So this is going to provide a bit more of a challenge than some of our competitors will be expecting tonight. I had a little look at the practice times earlier. It's seemingly like the Ferraris are looking quite strong, so do keep an eye out for Tony Sokolov in the 100 Ferrari. A couple of other drivers who I'm fascinated to see how they get on: Stuart Packham in the big Bentley, of course, and Mark Chapman, who, let's not forget, is one of the championship protagonists, and it is getting very, very tight at the top. But before we start and we go into everything fully, just have to do a quick reset with my literal headset, and we'll be back in just a moment. So, thank you for being patient with us whilst we were sorting out that technical error, but the drivers are setting their qualifying laps at the moment. This race circuit, of course, has had a couple of different layouts over the years. It hasn't really changed too much since 1999. It does have a separate variant of Formula E, and it also has the external circuit, which is slightly different, but we are using the Grand Prix circuit. That's 4.05 kilometres, 2.489 miles, 14 corners on the racetrack. It's quite unique in the sense that this circuit is one of the few FIA graded racetracks nowadays that still has corner names at most of the layouts that they use. So we're going to get a couple of names thrown in for today, but let's have a look at these standings, provisional qualifying standings at the moment. We've got Mark Chapman at the top, one of 9 drivers to have set a lap. Michael van der Waal is second. It's Tony Sokolov in third position. Then it's Jeffrey Van Buren in fourth position. Dennis Penders is in fifth, with Hartle-Toby sixth. That's a good effort from Tony Manley to be in seventh, as Van der Waal moves up to first position. Fabio Matt is back tonight in the 167 Ferrari, and then it is Joe Warner as well. There are a couple of drivers who are on qualifying bans or are unable to qualify, so we'll talk about those in a little bit of time. But let's get a lap on board with one of the drivers. And I think I could see Tony Manley was coming around the final corner. So let's go on board with the Italian. We come towards turn 1 then, the Aston Martin building up to about 155 miles an hour on the brakes, down through the gears into Aspar at turn 1. You can use a little bit more of the exit curb, which sure enough the Italian does as Hartle-Toby moves out of the way for turn number 2 at Dewin. This is a difficult corner, very slow left-hander. You can very easily run wide as the Aston Martin does there through turn 3, and then a quick flick down the gears into turn 4. It's a nice cambered corner that at Nico Terral. Turn 5 is an everlasting right-hander which goes on for a little bit longer than you would want your front left tyre to want to hang on to. Turn 6, Angel Nieto, nicely done from the Italian thus far, but he is a little bit down on his best lap. Turn 7 here at the left-hander, it's a little flick left, and then he's on the brakes once again into Bernat Martinez at turn 8. It's another slower corner. Turn 9, straightforward enough, but turn 10 and 11 is very, very tricky. You've got to spot your braking zone middle of the way through turn 10 and then progressively turn the car and not put the power down too early on. Nicely done so far. Turn 12 at Champi Herreros. Ooh, as the Italian just went a little bit too far on the left-hand curb. Gone away with that as he comes into turn 13. Again, another long sweeping corner and a difficult braking zone at Adrian Campos, and sure enough, falls foul of the undulating camber and runs a little bit wide. It won't be an improvement from the Italian, but he is inside the top 10, so that's still a really good effort to see him nestled quite comfortably in the top 10 at the moment. But there is still 12 minutes and 50 seconds to go. Plenty of time for the qualifying order to change. That is absolutely certain. He's being caught by Hartle-Toby, who he overtook on his flying lap earlier. A couple of cars very close together on circuit. There is Hartle-Toby for that matter. In fact, Manley has just dropped down to 8th position. There's Tony Sokolov, who has been magnificent this season with the number of victories that he has had. He's got an outside chance at the championship. Admittedly, he's 50 points behind Stuart Packham. It would have to take something spectacular to go wrong for the drivers in front of him before he can seriously mount a championship challenge. But again, anything can happen in motor racing, and typically it usually does. So let's not rule anything out just yet. Fabio Matt circulating. Dennis Penders in the top 5. That's a good qualifying effort from him. Danny Zoutenbayer, really nice to see the reigning champion back in the ACC Race Nation Series. We haven't seen him for a few rounds, unfortunately, which is kind of a shame actually, because at the point when he last raced at round 10, at that point he was leading the championship on 250 points, but we've not seen him for the last 3 races, and that has unfortunately led him to being over 100 points away from Stuart Packham in the Drivers' Championship. So he won't be winning the championship crown. He'll be handing that trophy over to somebody else at the end of next week's action at the Nürburgring Nordschleife. And that will be our last race of the season. I'm really excited about tonight's racing, because the thing with Valencia is that, as you can tell if we ride on board with Zattenbayer, it is not an easy circuit to overtake on. It is very challenging, it's very stop-start. It is a circuit that certainly flows beautifully well for the MotoGP riders and anyone who's in Moto2, Moto3 or a Moto e-bike. But for the race cars that we're operating in the GT3s tonight, that's a little bit more challenging. There are some opportunities around the circuit, but I wouldn't call them clear-cut chances. Even going into turn one, it is quite a challenge for a driver to put an overtake in. Maybe there could be a surprise here at the right-hander, potentially at turn 10, 11, if someone wanted to jump in up the inside. That could be an overtaking spot, but it's going to be almost a gambler's fallacy, I think, for some drivers. But we'll see how they get on. That's Dan Hatton moving out of the way. Another strong qualifying effort from him so far as we move into the final 10 minutes of the session. So whilst we're here, let's go through the championship standings. It is very tight at the top. So it's Stuart Packham who leads on 357 points. So we'll just cut over to Packham, who's 5th in the Big Bentley. That's going to be interesting to see how that car gets on around such a tight and technical circuit. Mark Chapman is 2nd on 353 points in the AMR V8. It's very close between those two. Then Jeffrey Van Buren, who's currently on pole position provisionally, he's on 343. Now those three drivers are very close in terms of their competitiveness, their driving abilities, and of course in total points. But with the final round next week being a double points round, Jeffrey Van Buren has a realistic chance of still winning the championship, but he does realistically need to win the race tonight, and if Packham and Chapman finish where they are, he'd give himself a real good opportunity to go ahead and potentially take a first championship crown, but still very early days. 4th place at the moment is Dennis Penders. He's 8th on circuit, but 4th in the driver's standings on 307. Then it's Hartle Toby. Just see if we can find the 208. There he is in the Mustang. He's on 306. Tony Sokolov in the 100 Ferrari. He is 6th overall on 305 points. The last driver in the 300 points tally is Jordan Hardin on 302, but he is not here tonight, unfortunately. So that means Dan Hatton has a glorious opportunity in the 55 to overtake Jordan in the driver's standings. He's on 297. Howard Dunn is on 296. I was watching him earlier in practice. It seems to be a bit of understeer in that AMR V8. I was watching his car quite closely. And then lastly, the driver that we're on board with for the qualifying lap inside the top 10 is Tony Manley. He's on 256 points. He's had 3 top 10 finishes this season, though, has Tony, and that's encouraging. His consistency is certainly improving in this championship. It's really nice to see. You know, when I first started commentating on ACC Race Nation, which was at the end of season 8, I remember he was more near the tail end of the field, battling with a few drivers, but he's really progressed since then, and it's fabulous to see. Really nice to see him moving up through the field and fighting it with the big guys, as he has a huge slide going into the left-hander there. How he's got away with that, I'm not sure at turn 8, but he has lived to fight another day. So well done to Tony Manley on that bit of car control. But 7 minutes remain. We'll get on board with a couple of the drivers who are navigating this circuit. And I do feel that the Ferrari drivers this evening have got a track that really well suits their car. You know, the 296 GT3, it is mid-engined, of course. It's got a really nice transverse layout on the car, so that helps with weight dynamics and fluid dynamics of the aero package that it's got on the car. So the Ferrari is really well suited, as you can see, to this circuit, as Van Buren pushing the extremities, and that's what I was saying before. Round goes Mark Chapman in front of us. This is what I was saying before, that this circuit does bite back. The curbs are not particularly user-friendly around here, and Mark Chapman has just discovered that to his cost. So that'll be a lap time gone. He's still got plenty of time. He'll have to potentially look at getting a new set of tyres on the car if he's flat spotted them. But right now, yeah, he has actually returned to the pits. So Mark Chapman deciding to change, and that gives him the opportunity to get some pressure and warmth back into those new tyres. He's come straight back out actually, so he's getting on with it as soon as he can. Just to make a point here as well, if we can just get on board with one of the drivers, I'm just going to pick onto the radar, that is Dennis Penders coming down the main straight. The entrance of the pit lane is on the right hand side after you exit turn 14, but the feed out from the pit lane is actually a little bit more awkward. It's on the exit of turn 1, but you have to follow that white line all the way through to where the faster cars who are on their laps will meet on the racing line. That could be a problem later on in the race when we get to our pit stops, because if there are two cars approaching the same racing piece of tarmac at the same time, there could be an accident if they don't have race awareness about them. So that's something we'll keep an eye out on as we move forward into the final quarter of this qualifying session. Skip back through the cameras. We'll just have a look to see Sebastian Berger up in 4th position. I'm quite impressed with Tony Sokolov's time. I think what I'm impressed by is not only his incredible consistency this season of all the podiums he's got, but he's running with ballast. If you think about the drivers who finished in the top 3 last week, it was Tony Sokolov, Hartle Toby and Mark Chapman. They're running different amounts of ballast, so Sokolov will be running the most at 30. You then have Hartle Toby, he's going to be running a little bit less. I think he's running 20, and then it's 10 for Mark Chapman, who finished 3rd. So I'm quite impressed with those two in the top 5. I think Hartle Toby's up against it tonight because, one, the Mustang is not particularly well suited to this circuit, to be honest. I've talked about how it prefers Circuit de la Sarthe or other circuits of a flowing nature. This is quite tight and technical, and you can see the gap between himself and Dennis Penders is 6/10. So the raw speed tonight, he's going to have to be patient more than anything and see who in front of him falls by the wayside. But again, it can all change. You never know. We've seen in the past people have had massive accidents, and then drivers who you wouldn't expect to be near the top 5 end up right up there. We had this at Bathurst a couple of seasons ago. A number of drivers were bouncing up and down the field. It ended up with Jordan Harding finishing 2nd that day, and he started in 23rd. So anything can happen in ACC Race Nation. It really has a lottery applied to it on some days when the racing gods decide they want to do something a little bit more fun compared to the norm. Van Buren goes across the line, doesn't improve. There's Packham up to 3rd position. He'll be quite pleased with that. There's Sebastian Berger. First time I've actually had... I was just about to say, first time we've seen him on circuit. But the Porsche really getting the car fired out of the corner there on the exit of the 2nd sector. Well, rather the exit of the 1st sector time goal then that we had. So out of turn 6, just about gets away with that. And we also have, if I'm right in saying tonight, if my information is correct, I'm just having a little observation of this. Yes, that is the case. Tonight, I'm delighted to say that joining us for the first time this season, he's had a few races where he was aiming to join, but it hasn't quite pulled off for him. We've got another driver in the field of Josh Welberlove. So the number 54, the 2nd Lamborghini in the field. I'm sure Rich Jarron will be happy to have someone to play with this evening. But Josh making his debut in the series, which is great to see. He was supposed to race with us just before the end of 2025, but unfortunately, for whatever reason, he couldn't make it in for the event. But he's here tonight, and he's already up to 15th place. So that's a nice opening lap for the 54. Puts himself just in front of Byford Rue and Joe Warner, who is still dialing himself in to his wheel. but less than a minute and 15 seconds to go. These drivers now who are on their flying laps, they're on their penultimate or final lap. Michael van der Waal is absolutely flying this evening. It's really nice to see him up there. A driver who, if memory serves me correctly, I don't believe van der Waal has had a podium in the championship that I've witnessed. But we'll have to get some extra confirmation on that one. So I will have a look for that in just a moment. But really competitive effort from him. Packham's there in third, Sokolov's fourth. Then it's Dan Hatton in fifth place. Berger's sixth and in the pit, so he's not coming out again. What about Mark Chapman? He's on a lap. He's getting a nice tow from Howard Dunn, actually. Does this make an improvement for him? No, he's going to have to... Oh, he does have an improvement. That was a late update from the timing board. So he goes to fifth. That puts him on the third row of the grid, right behind Packham. He'd like, ideally, to be in front of Packham, but he will have to make do for now, and he's going to have to try and find a way past Dunn. Fabio back coming towards the start-finish line. He'll get another lap in. He carries on. Packham, though, won't. So he's going to be the first driver to see the checkered flag in qualifying, and Chappers goes across the... Well, rather, Chapman's big rival of Stuart Packham goes across the line, and he goes to fourth place. Who was that coming across the line? It's Tony Sokolov going into the pits. Dan Hatton also returns to pit lane. So the next driver you're looking at is Jacob Byford-Rue in the M6. The 467. Can he get in front of Josh Wellbeloved? We'll have to wait and see. I'm just looking. Josh is also in the pits alongside a number of other drivers. But Byford-Rue's just coming around this left-hander at turn 11. See if we can get on board, actually. Probably be a little bit easier. And then come back to this one so we can actually work it out. So there we go. Byford-Rue just coming towards the start-finish line. He goes into the pits, which is less than ideal. Chapman, though, he's carried on with his lap, as has Sokolov. Oh, and that's going to be game over on that lap. He runs too deep. Sokolov trying to get to the front row. He only needs 0.06 of a second to get there. Can he make it? No. He ends up in third place. So let's have a look at your qualifying positions then for the penultimate round of the championship. We have Jeffrey Van Buren on pole position. Michael van der Waal, best qualifying of the season, on the front row. It's Sokolov and Packham on row 2, with Chapman and Hatton on row 3. Sebastian Berger and Dennis Penders are on row 4, with Hartle Toby and Danny Zoutenbayer rounding out the top 10. Howard Dunn and Tony Manley are in row 6, with Fabio Matt and Liam Watkinson in 13th and 14th places. Ross Harris and Josh Wellbeloved are on row number 8, with Jacob Byford-Rue and Joe Warner on row 9, and on row 10 on his own is Rich Jarram. Well, that was a fascinating qualifying session there, to be honest with you. There was quite a lot going on, to be honest, in the action that we were watching. But it is Van Buren getting a very timely pole position for himself. I think he'll be quite pleased with that performance. And yeah, just having a little read through of my options that I always like to have when I talk about drivers. Michael van der Waal, I remember last season he had a period of drives where he was doing really, really well. He was qualifying quite high, but he didn't quite make it onto the podium. I think he finished 4th twice in the penultimate rounds of the championship in season 10. So he's yet to make it onto the podium. And I'm always a proponent of the underdog. I always like to highlight the underdog because it's, you know, we cover quite a lot in motorsport nowadays, drivers who are fabulous, and that's absolutely right to do. Of course, we praise them for the abilities that they have, but it's always nice to see an underdog up near the front, you know, a driver who is pretty quick anyway, but doesn't necessarily always have the best of luck to get up there. So Van der Waal being up there and Dan Hatton, you know, that is really promising for this race. But we are due to start in 90 seconds, so I'm just going to have a moment to reflect, and then I'll be back in less than 60 seconds. So here we go then. Not too far away now from the start of this 1 hour race. In front of us, 19 drivers, well 18 drivers correctly, on the grid, with Jeffrey Van Buren at the front of it and Rich Jarab at the back of the pack. We will see who will move up the grid and who will move down the grid and who will get the race victory, because that is up in the air this evening. Just a little comment for... Oh, it's good to see you, Jacob Byford. He's just made a comment here to say that he was 1.2 seconds up, chance for 14th place, but had a massive slide losing it, and then had another at the final corner, invalidating it. I did see, funnily enough, a slow-moving car on the track map whilst we were watching the drivers finishing their qualifying laps, and I thought it was yourself, but I didn't make reference to it. So that's unfortunate, Byford. You can, of course, move up through the field, and I'm looking forward to seeing how you get on. Maybe there's more time on the board for you. Let's just have a little look, actually. That's Joe Warner back in the pits. Not sure what has happened there. That's a little bit peculiar. As we go through the field, not getting the option to do what I typically do in terms of the race director role, where we can return to the garage and get all the timing board up. But maybe that will asynchronize itself as we move into the race start. 3 minutes past 2 local time. Of course, if you're living in the UK right now, it's more like 10 past 8 at the moment. For any African Cup of Nations football fans, if you're aware, Nigeria currently 0-0 with Morocco, the hosts, for anybody who is curious about that. Of course, I am, being of Nigerian heritage. Of course, I'm looking forward to seeing, well, hoping, fingers crossed, that we can score a performance this evening and get to the final. But enough about that. We've got Sokolov just there in third place. He was watching Van Buren firing up those tyres in first place. I'm curious to see if Michael van der Waal can get the jump on the Ferrari as they approach turn 1. We saw it last week when Hartle Toby jumped in front of Sokolov and spent a good portion of the race in front of him. So it is well known that that can happen, but we'll have to wait and see. Van Buren's got a championship to fight for. Van der Waal is hoping for a first podium, if not a win. The drivers are coming down 2 by 2, a little bit like Noah's Ark, but more noise, and they're firing themselves towards the race start. 60 minutes of action around this 14-corner circuit, and it is going to be an absolute treat, I'm sure, and the race is live from Valencia, and that's the start that Van Buren would have wanted. And in fact, it looks like at the back, Michael van der Waal has not made advantage of his grid position, and he's dropped to 4th place already. Stuart Packham has had a blistering launch, and using the power of the Bentley has moved himself into 2nd place. There's Sebastian Berger in the middle of the pack. We can now get the cameras that we were after. So you've got Sokolov there in 3rd position. He hasn't moved, and that is Dan Hatton trying to overtake Chappers, but I think Chapman's going to be on the inside, but he's leaving racing room. He doesn't want to get involved in any incidents early on as the timing tower cycles its way through. I know it looks a little bit more daunting than a KFC order menu, but right now Chapman is in 6th place. He's got Berger on the inside of him. He's going to squeeze him onto the grass, and in fact Penders is trying to go around the outside of Berger at turn number 8. That is a brave move, but I don't think he's going to have the overspeed to get through, and sure enough he hasn't, so he's going to slot in behind. But a cracking start for Stuart Packham, the championship leader. Oh, Sebastian Berger's had a problem and he's off. I think he's had a wheel issue again. He's had a nightmare again for him. Ah, what a shame for him that is. But right now, at the front of this race, Jeffrey Van Buren leads the way, and Stuart Packham has had an absolute blinder of a start to go up to 2nd place. Sokolov's 3rd, then it's Van der Waal who'll be kicking himself after that restart. Then it's Dan Hatton. Mark Chapman's in 6th place, Penders is in 7th. Manley was quite close to the back of Zoutenbayer, who goes too deep at turn 1, and that is the Italian through. And you got Howard Dunn trying to get involved in that, but somehow Zoutenbayer actually managed to retain the position. I'm surprised at that. The Italian's on the inside at turn 2. He'll have the inside for 3, but he'll have the outside for 4. And this is opportunistic from Dunn. He's going to try and go through, and there's contact between the two AMR V8s. Liam Watkinson avoids it, as does Byford Rue, as does Wellbelove. So they've all managed to just about survive that one, but I think I did say it was an opportunistic move. It didn't find a way through, and look at this at the front. Packham's getting on with it. He wants to find a way through. He wants to get past Van Buren and extend his lead in the championship. Van Buren having to defend into turns 10 and 11. He won't want that in the slightest. He wants to try and run away. But Packham is not enabling him to do that. Both of them giving a good clear avoidance of the curbs there. Clearly everybody learning that. Sokolov's a little bit further back, as is Van der Waal, as is Hatton. He's had a good start. Chapman went backwards, then it's Penders, and then it's Hartle Toby, who's just over a second behind the lead in 7. I think it's going to be hard for Toby to hold on to this group, but he has proven me wrong before. So we'll see how he gets on. Zoutenbayer's in 9th, and it's Liam Watkinson inside the top 10. Josh Wellbelove's had a great start. He's up to 11th in that Huracan Performante Lamborghini. Then Dunn after his incident with Tony Manley, who doesn't seemingly have much damage from what we can tell. His car was bouncing all over turn 1 though. We'll just have a little look at the external cameras for Tony Manley. He won't be too happy about that incident with Howard Dunn. Looks like there's a bit of scuffing going on the side of the car, but I don't think that incident was too extreme. I don't think that that's going to cause too many problems. Is that Rich Jarram off the road? I think it is. There he is, the gold and blue Lamborghini with the smoke pouring out of the back of it from the gravel. That's a telltale sign when someone's been off the road. Now, back at the front with the lead in 7. Van Buren still has 1st place, which is exactly what he wants. But Packham looks very strong around this part of the circuit. Look how much he closes up going into the final couple of corners. He's going to be in the slipstream of Van Buren, and look at this, he is closing this gap down. He's going to have the inside line, I think, potentially. If Van Buren doesn't cover it, he's going to go to the left hand side. Does the Dutchman. Packham goes to the outside line at turn 1. We ride on the external camera, and Van Buren keeps the position. Packham giving quite a wide berth to that one. Ooh, I thought Sokolov was going to try and slide one up. Look at how close he is. The bright yellow Ferrari right in the rear camera of the Bentley made from Crew. All the lads back at the factory, the lads and girls at the Crew factory will be thinking, Jesus, we weren't expecting a yellow car right behind us all the way through the session. He's going to look to the inside of thought for a moment. But he stays behind for now. Oh, wow, wow. This group at the minute, you can see them pretty much all nose to tail. You've got a I'm going to say a septet of cars, because Penders is there. He's not too far away. He's within... Oh, we didn't see it, unfortunately. I just cut to it at the wrong time, but Michael van der Waal has gone off the road, and I did just say it's a septet. It's no longer a septet, unfortunately. He's gone round, and Mark Chapman's gone backwards as well. So I suspect him and the McLaren have got together, and that's a great shame for those two, but that's going to affect Chapman. Although he hasn't lost the position in the timing table, he has lost time to those in front of him. So that puts Dennis Penders up to 5th place. He's on a cracking run of form as the Belgian at the moment. You know, fresh from that first podium in the championship 2 races ago before the Christmas break. You know, and he's just been scoring some really good results this season. A couple of top 5s, top 6s. It's been really right up there, and Mr. Consistent he is. I think he's having a great time in this championship currently, but Can he keep hold of a top 5 place in the championship standings? It would be really impressive if he could. Rich Jarram serves that drive-through penalty whilst I was talking. He got that for track limit, so less than ideal. But Van Buren still has the lead, and that septet has now become a trio, separated within a second of one another. Hatton is there in 4th place, not too far away, just shadowing the group around him. And in fact, Hatton's best result this season is a 4th place, so he's got the speed, has Hatton. As I've said before, he's demonstrated it in qualifying. It's just converting that into a race podium. And he's come close. He's had loads of top 5s, but he just hasn't quite made it onto the rostrum as of yet. But he's just got himself back to within a second of the car in front, so the trio swells to a quad. Penders is there in 5th position. I think he's just going to keep doing what he does best, which is just being consistent. Then it's Chapman in 6th, Hartletoby 7th, Danny's out in by 8th, the recovering Michael van der Waal sadly down in 9th place. Then it's Howard Dunn. Josh Wellbelover's in 11th position. Looks like he's got a bit of damage to the front end of that Huracan. Yeah, in fact, it's quite visible damage, that, really. So he has been into the rear end of another car. Liam Watkinson is in 12th position. Then it's Tony Manley after his incident with Howard Dunn earlier. Byford Rue is in 14th, who's also got damage to the front of that car. Fabio Matt also has damage to his 296 GT3. And Joe Warner is just there. We couldn't see him for a moment. He doesn't have any damage, but I know that with Joe, he's still just adapting to everything. So Joe doing what he can in 16th position. And there's Rich Jarram. I'm not sure if Rich is having a few problems. He's just, he's awkwardly on, kind of half on the racing line there. You could see the drivers trying to find a way past him. It's an awkward corner to give him his defence there. It's an awkward corner to try and move out of the way for, and he's actually come into the pits as Jeffrey Van Buren throws a huge shape down the main straight. But you can tell that Ferrari has been geared a little bit more for acceleration as opposed to top speed. Clearly the setup is just trying to help him fire out of the corners, which is what is keeping him ahead of Packham's straight line speed advantage, but he needs to get turn 14 correct every single time he goes around it. Sokolov looks very quick at the moment. He's right on the big rear wing of that Bentley. Oh, that was a little bit wide from Packham. Doesn't want to have any more issues like that, because Sokolov is looking very feisty at the moment. He'll want to throw an overtake in where he possibly can, and if he Packham's almost lost the back end. He just about gathers it all together at turn 8, and he went on the curb and it unsettled the car, and I thought for a moment he was going to go round and maybe slide off to the inside of the track. He just gathered it together. Well, the championship leader lives to fight another day, but I said earlier, and I'll repeat it again, this circuit does bite back at drivers. And Packham's car is looking very loose at the moment. on the rear. I'm not sure if that's due to brake bias or if that is due to a setup change or the heat on the circuit. Not quite sure about that one. As Rich Jarron picks up another penalty, unfortunately. Fabio Matt is also in the pits. Is Packham close enough this time? No, not quite. But Van Buren runs wide and Packham just can't take advantage, and annoyingly for the drivers who are battling for the lead of the race, they don't know where Jarram's going. He actually moves off the racing tarmac surface completely in the end to jump out of the way. But you could see the consternation between the drivers, the little bit of doubt that they've got, trying to figure out where the back marker is going, unfortunately. Dan Hatton just at the tail end of this group. He's got the fastest lap of the race, and could you believe we're 12 minutes into the session already? This has been exceptionally close. And we'll have to see if Dan Hatton can maybe pull off a strategic masterclass. That is something that Hatton has been a little bit vulnerable at times to. You know, the other drivers typically that I've noticed on with Hatton on a number of occasions, he's been undercut by a couple of drivers. And I'm just wondering, he's in that position to do that today. He could fire his car into the pits and no one else would notice until the next lap. Is that an option he's thinking about right now as we approach the quarter mark of the race? Look at Packham putting the pressure on. This is a big chance for the big Bentley. To the outside line goes the blue machine. It's going to be a long, long way around at turn one, and Van Buren will cover that line off. He'll run a little bit wider, but the Ferrari's got such a good rotation through there. He will carry on in the lead of the race. We've lost a couple of drivers already, unfortunately. We're down to 15. We started with 18. We lost Sebastian Berger thanks to some technical issues. We've lost Rich Jarram as well in the last lap. There is somebody else who we have lost in this time, but I haven't been able to get an update from our race director who that is as of yet, which is a good shame really, because it's always good to see as many drivers as possible doing what they can. Oh, as Sokolov gets very close once again. You can see that the Ferraris are really strong around this circuit, and even the McLaren of Hatton is very strong around here too. Packham is just about hanging on with this group at the minute. You can see he's pushing the extremes of that Bentley, cutting the corner, the curbs a little bit more. So we'll have to see what the strategy is as we ride on board at the back of this pack. Sebastian Berger just saying that he had a disconnection again as Van Buren defending from Packham. But yeah, sad to see Berger disconnecting. It's becoming more of an issue for him as everyone, Constantine, is up at turn number 2. Whoa, Hatton was eager to get on the throttle. He noticed the hesitation from the Ferrari in front of him, and he's finding as many areas on the racetrack to accompany that Ferrari, but he can't find the way through. We also have a drive through for Liam Watkinson for track limits just whilst that was going on, but we're a quarter of the race distance. And these four are putting on a masterclass at the moment of how to go racing in close proximity. In fact, I say close proximity, but it looks as if that Van Buren's just Hatton slides a little bit. Yeah, I was going to say, it looks like he's just got a little bit of a breather out there. Sadly, we've lost another driver from the event so far. Michael van der Waal has left, unfortunately. He's retired. Not sure if he's left or he's retired. Look at Stuart Packham. I think the tyres on the Bentley are starting to struggle. I think they're overheating a little bit. This is one of those race circuits where tyre wear might not be pushed as much through lateral load but the heat cycle that goes through them, through the heavy braking zones and the short, sharp acceleration pitches, it will drive the internal temperatures up. And whilst that not be something that the drivers can always see within the game, it certainly exists. So I wonder if Packham's losing a little bit of grip from the tyre wear, but also losing grip from the temperature, which will be really problematic if he can't get that under control. But he is the championship leader, so of course these challenges will come at him. He should be able to deal with these appropriately. And I've got to say, Dennis Penders is doing a stellar job here in 5th place. He's only 2 seconds off the quartet in front of him. This is a really encouraging performance from him. I do wish that I had seen his first podium within ACC. But sadly I did not. I wasn't available on that day, but I really think he's taking big steps forward as the Belgian. And he's putting in a good shift right now, but we're going to come away from him. We don't want to talk any further about him because he's got Chapman closing the gap up to him steadily. Not sure if Chapman has too much damage. Zoutenbayer, from his earlier incident with Michael van der Waal, Zoutenbayer is running in 7th place. Hartle-Toby, I think he'll be happy to be in 8th place, considering that his car is hamstrung with 20 kilos of extra weight. Howard Dunn's running in the top 9. Then it's Tony Manley in 10th place. The other driver we've lost is Josh Wellbeloved. Unfortunately, the 54 has gone, so sadly he has disappeared. Liam Watkinson's 11th, Jacob Byford-Rue is in 12th, and Joe Warner, by measure of consistently driving, is in 13th place. As he has a little slide coming through the left-hander, but these... Stuart Packham's got into the lead! We were going through the timing tower and Packham has got in front of Van Buren, and I can only assume he's done it down the main straight. Well done to the race director, we completely missed that one. But Packham leads the way, and he's going to be extending his championship lead over Mark Chapman by a considerable 7 points as it stands, and that is not an insignificant margin at all. As Joe Warner has gone off the road, unfortunately for him, but ideally for everybody who is called Stuart Packham, because he doesn't have to worry about trying to lap him, as Van Buren had a little wiggle under the braking zone there. Just about managed to settle everything down before he turned into the corner. But Packham now getting off and up the road. I wonder if Van Buren's had a little error somewhere. His lap time was a 32.5 that last lap, and that's slower than everybody else. Even Packham did a 31.6, so I'm just wondering, did Van Buren, rather than getting overtaken on the straight, did he make a mistake? I wonder if that's what's caused the problem for him. And we come up to a third of the race distance. Dan Hatton still buzzing around the back of the Ferrari, and I should now be saying Ferraris, and Mark Chapman has got up to the back of Dennis Penders, so after giving Dennis praise, sadly he's had a little error somewhere. He's dropped into the clutches of the Aston Martin, so that'll be a fight we'll just keep an eye on. Let's ride on the rear view camera. You can see where Hatton is closing the gap and then falling away. First gear for the 100 Ferrari as they exit the right-hander, then into another right-hander, second gear at Champi Herreros. It's a difficult corner, that, because that's where the curb is that has spat a few cars around this evening. Then it's 13 and into Adrian Campos, a legendary figure in Spanish motorsport, I must say, for those who are unaware of Adrian Campos and the history that he has had. He passed away a couple of years ago, sadly, at quite a young age. I think he was only 60. But he raced for Minardi back in the late 80s, and he even did some testing with Tyrrell as well back in the day. But what he's really known for within motorsport is not so much his racing career, but his team management. Obviously they ran Campos Racing for a number of years, from like the 1990s effectively. He ran Marc Gené in one of the feeder series, and ever since then he moved into Formula 2, etc., and got involved in the championship and was there for quite a long time. So he did a really good job with that. And then he also, of course, worked as part of HRT F1 team back in 2010. Some of you might remember HRT wasn't especially great, but it lives in the hearts of a lot of people in terms of the team. But it originally was going to be called Campos Racing F1, and then Jose Ramon Cadabante came in, and that became HRT, and he was the vice president at the time. So he was a massive figure in Spanish motorsport, and that's why that corner is named after him. So a little bit of a history lesson for you whilst we watch the bright red and yellow McLaren behind us harry the 100 296 GT3. So there you go, a little bit of information for you to think about as we go under the Repsol banner and towards turn number 1 for the 14th time in this race. And the drivers might start to think about a pit stop. I wonder if anyone's going to have twitchy hands, twitchy feet, and decide to bail into the pit lane. It is a valid strategy. You would have to take those tyres quite a long way though in this race, and if we're seeing the issues that we're seeing at the moment with cars starting to slide around a little bit more, maybe everyone's going to pile into the pits at the same time 30 minutes to go. So we shall see who decides to do that. Fabio Matt's still circulating. I know he's had a bit of a torrid race so far. He's been in the pits a couple of times. He's 2 laps down, but the key thing in this championship is if you finish, you score points, and if you finish 13th, you're going to get quite a hatful of points. So absolutely no problem at all. It'll do his championship no harm. Fabio Matt, if memory serves me correctly, he's 18th in the drivers' standings, and this will give him a chance to, close the gap to the drivers who are in 13th and 14th, like Liam Watkinson, Ross Harris, who isn't here tonight, Joe Warner, who he's in front of at the moment. So that's ideal for him. And Penders has been overtaken by Mark Chapman, who is in the pits. Is that Tony Sokolov? It is Tony Sokolov. I said, was anyone going to have trigger hands or trigger feet? And it turns out the 100 did. Sokolov, the Croatian, is into the pit lane as we follow Penders behind Mark Chapman, who is trying to recover some spaces from his incident earlier with Michael van der Waal. Well, this is now all down to strategy. Sokolov is still in the pit. I'm just looking to see where he comes out. Will he come out behind anybody? Is he going to get stuck behind anyone? He's going to have the 318 clears him. And I think Joe Warner is coming out of the final corner. The 100's still not moving. Howard Dunn's going into his pit box at the moment. But yeah, Joe Warner's going to be comfortably clear of him. So Sokolov is going to have a lot of clean air to pump some lap times in. And there he goes, he sets off. So he's been in the pits for quite a fair chunk of time, to be honest. So I wonder if he's got a new set of boots on that GT3 296 car of his. What that does, it gives a little bit of a breather for Jeffrey Van Buren, because he did have Sokolov right behind him for a number of laps and couldn't afford to make any mistakes. Now he's got a little buffer to Dan Hatton as the drivers lap a couple of cars who have gone into the pits, including Howard Dunn. Still plenty of time remaining in this race, but the 3 drivers in the podium positions at the moment, they are still circulating. They haven't made a pit stop. Sokolov, of course, has come out. He is in clear air. The next driver in front of him is Joe Warner, but I'd estimate that Joe is probably about 5 or 6 seconds up the road from him, so he's not probably going to catch the BMW on this lap, but funny things can happen. as they come around turn 4, well, turn number 8, I should say. I had a wrong camera angle there that gave me a little bit of jip. But through the race so far, Packham, he'll be happy that he got in front of Van Buren. He's been at the front since that mistake from the Dutchman as he clips over the curb. It's one of the good things about that Bentley is that when it hits that curb at the weighted angle it has, it doesn't unsettle the car as much compared to others. Him and Hartle Toby will be sharing notes, of course, about that later on because Toby's in the Mustang. And I do obviously, I've not pointed this out actually on the stream to anybody yet, but when we go into turn 1, do you tell me if you notice anything quite interesting about Stewart's position? As he goes into turn 1, you'll see it again in turn 2. Just give yourselves a moment to figure it out as he goes through the braking zone, very clearly in front of us there. He's obviously driving the big Bentley and he's got Nissan Nismo GT3 gloves on. I'm of course going to be wondering what Mr. Bentley will be thinking about that, about his lead driver running some Nismo gloves. Fascinating how that's managed to happen within the lobby, but there we are. Now, whilst we've been watching and being on board with Packham, Sokolov has cleared Joe Warner. Didn't look as if he had any problems getting past. But there is still plenty of time for this race strategy to play out a little bit differently for everybody. We are now approaching that 30-minute mark, which is where you'll start to see more drivers dive into the pits. If we just go into the race director role here, see that the top 8, well, I was just about to say the top 8, apart from Hartle Toby, have all made a pit stop. Liam Watkinson's the only other driver who is yet to make a pit stop. So a lot of drivers still carrying on, as does Packham. Oh, Van Buren behind Dan Hatton. I wonder what happened there, because Hatton was clearly in front of Van Buren as we went into the pit lane. So did the Dutchman have another little wobble out there on circuit, or did Hatton fly past him in the braking zone for the pit lane? That is peculiar, but the Dutchman is in his pit box. He had to reverse back then. He lost a little bit of an advantage. Chappers is in too, with 31 minutes of the race remaining. So Penders carries on. Zoutenbayer has carried on, so that moves him into 3rd position. Tony Manley will move into 4th, and Sokolov is going through turns number 12 and 13. This is important now in terms of where he will feed out, because if he gets out in front of Hatton and he gets out in front of Van Buren, chances are he'll get right on ahead. But I think that's Hatton coming out of the pits. It is. So Hatton elects not to change tyres, and he is comfortably in front. What about Van Buren? He's going to be out behind Zoutenbayer, not Zoutenbayer, rather out behind Tony Sokolov, but he's just picked up a stop and go penalty for speeding in the pit lane, and I have a sinking feeling that that might just spell the end for a proper championship fight for Van Buren next week, because that is going to set him very far back as Packham comes into the pits now. So this is another critical pit stop, because Packham will pit, but Hatton could take the lead here. Dan Hatton's got quite a comfortable advantage over the 100 of Tony Sokolov. We could see for the first time in the championship Dan Hatton leading a race in the GT3 series, which would be some turn up for the books. Dennis Penders is in as well. So the top 2 have returned to the pit lane. Danny Zoutenbayer, the only driver in the top 3 yet to pit. Tony Manley is also going to join him and carry on. So there is Hatton going through turn 13. Tony Sokolov, he's about 3.5 seconds behind, but he has got fresh tyres. That's the difference between the two cars. Van Buren is going to fall away from this fight thanks to his stop and go, and he's got Mark Chapman right behind him as well. So what does Van Buren do? He goes straight into the pits. He's out of the way. Where is Packham? He's in front of, I believe he is in front of Dan Hatton. Only just. But the 108 has retained the lead by not changing tyres. And the big Bentley still leads. But he's got a new challenger behind him in the frame of Dan Hatton. And thanks to Van Buren fallen by the wayside, the quartet who were fighting over the 3 spots of the podium has become a trio. Number 75 getting a drive-through for track limits, which of course around this circuit makes sense. What a glorious opportunity this is for the 55. But do not discount Mark Chapman, who seems to have found some form since he's been in the pits. I was certainly had a little bit of damage, but his lap times are on the ball. He's closed that gap down to Tony Sokolov from pre-pitting. So earlier on, Sokolov was about 5.5 seconds clear of the Aston Martin. He's now 4 seconds behind at that split. We'll just wait as he comes across the line. 4.5 seconds. So Chappers has lost a little bit of time, unfortunately. But Sokolov is closing the gap down to the drivers in front of him. So is the extra set of boots working in his favour as Chapman retakes 4th place on the road as he goes past the pit lane? But it's Packham who leads now on track. Hatton is 2nd. Sokolov is 3rd, just out in front of, I think that was Liam Watkinson coming out of the pits. Don't know if he was serving his drive-through there. Chapman will now slide, as I said before, into 4th position. Penders will be running inside the top 5. Then it'll be Danny Zoutenbayer, who's had a really quietly effective race, actually. Might not have had the best qualifying ever, but he's moved up to 6th position on the road. And then it all gets a little bit more complicated from there. Hang on a minute. I was just about to say, hang on a minute, where has Stuart Packham gone? I thought for a brief moment he disappeared from the timing tower, but thankfully that is not the case. But he does now have the pressure of Dan Hatton behind him. And Dan Hatton, I said it before, he's on for a first ever podium, but this is a glorious chance to try and take not just a first podium, but a first victory in ACC. Oh, he's got that wrong though over the curb. He just about got away with not going off the road. I'm not going to say anything about Dan again for the rest of this race, because commentator's curse is unfortunately a very big thing in this, and that's Hartle Toby picking up a drive-through penalty, so that's going to affect his race. In fact, it might give Jeffrey Van Buren a shot at getting back into the top 7. He's only 4 seconds away from Tony Manley. In fact, I was going to say he's only 4 seconds away. He's not. He's actually moved in front of the AMR V8. He's also in front. It looks as if he's in front of, I was going to say Howard Dunn, but Howard Dunn is in fact in front of him, as is Tony Manley. So that gap's actually 14 seconds. So the timing tower and the track map are playing some silly moments with me at the moment, really. But Packham is getting that gap extended. He's just had a little bit of a dial of brake bias change for him, but he's 2 seconds clear of the man in 2nd place. Chapman is coming though. We just have a little look at the lap times. We just scroll down to the bottom. 1:31.6 from him on that last lap. That's a strong effort from Chapman. Sokolov did a 32 flat. Dan Hatton did a 32.7 and a 32.9. So he's just had a couple of mistakes that have dropped him away from the 31s that he was doing earlier in the race. And Packham, as we come off of the timing tower, there we go. He's also in the 32s. He's just dropped into the 31s on that lap. We'll see what happens is on that lap as well. He's done another 32.7. I just wonder if his gamble to not make a pit stop is now going to start counting against him as we move into the final phases of this race. There was briefly a yellow flag for Joe Warner, but that has continued on. But Hatton has slipped to over 3 seconds behind. So it looked as if at one point I genuinely did think that Hatton was going to take the lead of the race, but alas, that's not the case. And instead, he will have Tony Sokolov trying to snatch a position from him. There's Warner off the road, unfortunately, again. Howard Dunn still running in 7th place. Hartle Toby has just actually re-emerged in front of Jeffrey Van Buren. So that is the closest fight on track. So let's see if we can get on board with the Dutchman in 10th place. Thanks to the race director. There we go. Did you see the closing speed under the brakes then from Van Buren? He's going to go to the outside line at turn 2. We've not seen anyone try and go around here since lap 1. But the closing speed on that Ferrari was phenomenal on the brakes. Toby going extremely defensive. He's fighting for every position he can get hold of, and I can understand that for the Mustang. But he's in a very challenging fight, really, with the pole sitter. He's going to try and go around the outside at the left-hander. Oh, Toby just about retaining that position as they head towards turn 7 now, turn 8. Toby running a little bit deep. I am watching the track map for Hatton and Sokolov. They are nose to tail now. A nice line that from Toby. As you can see the glint going across the Mustang of the reflection in the sky of the sun as that Mustang just bottoms out on the curb. But this will be the problem for Van Buren, is now when you get into this straight here, flicks it through the apex at the final corner and then fires off it. Now, does Toby have the straight line advantage that he normally does? It's marginal, not what it normally is, and Toby comes back to his typical racing line, braking a little bit more readily into turn 1. Mustang's going to have to go defensive again. He nearly got caught out, and Van Buren's going to try it again around the outside at turn 2. Oh, a little bit of contact between the Ferrari and the Ford. We've heard that one before in GT3s and other car categories over the years. I'm going to have a little look. I just want a quick scan, because look at this. Sokolov trying to go around the outside at turn 1. And that's going to bring Mark Chapman back into this. Mark Chapman's going to have a chance to get back. He was 4 seconds behind a couple of laps ago. He's now 2.7. And was that Sokolov? Oh, I thought it was Sokolov almost getting underneath the McLaren then. What we'll do is we'll get the onboard cameras, or off-board cameras I should say. We'll see if we can follow it like this. So Sokolov's there. Van Buren looking definitely more likely of the two to get through. As we just move into the final 20 minutes of this race. Two narratives here of Van Buren trying to recover from the issues that he had earlier on with his stop-go penalty and trying to blast back from that. But he's got to get past Hartle Toby. And Sokolov's on the inside of Hatton and he's free, but that's Joe Warner going round. Again at the right-hander. And is Hatton going to try and make a lunge at the final corner? He's going to look to the outside line. Chapman now closing that gap down. Hatton's trying to do an undercut, but I just think the tyres, they're just not there compared to the Ferraris. And Hatton fought so hard that he's brought Chapman into play because of the fighting him and Sokolov have done. Oh, there's Van Buren again trying to go around the outside. Oh, Hartle Toby squeezing for all he's worth. Just going to see if Van Buren can find a way through. No, not at that corner. But Hatton is going to have to turn his attentions to the AMR V8 behind. And the Aston Martin behind him will want to make sure that he finishes on the podium. If he loses 3 points to Packham, it's all not over in the championship race. But 4, that makes it a little bit more of a challenge to overcome because of the double point situation. Oh, he's been hit. He's been hit. Hatton's been hit. Chapman tried to make a move, and now that's a little bit clumsy from the pair of them. But unfortunately for Chapman, he just fresher tyres, tried to find a way through, and unfortunately hits the back of Hatton. Again, good sportsmanship from Chapman to let Hatton back through, but that will have disrupted the flow of the race, really. It's going to take a few laps for Hatton to get back into the swing of things. What it does, and just whisper this, what it does do, thanks to that spin, an incident, Dennis Penders is 4 seconds behind. Can he have 2 podiums in a season? I think it'd be the best day of your life if it was, to be fair, if Penders was able to get 2 podiums in one season. Joe Warner's having some big difficulties at the moment. I'm not sure quite what's going on with him, but unfortunately we have seen him off the road on a couple of occasions. But Penders is bringing that gap down. On that last lap, just dropped down to 3.6 seconds. It was 4. After that spin, they got themselves sorted out. It was 4 seconds, and now it's about 3.6, 3.7. If these two start fighting, Penders will be in with a shot here. And I don't know if Penders got new tyres on or not. That's a question we don't have available to us. We don't have an answer for that. Danny Zoutenbayer's in 6th place. He's a little bit further back. I'm just going to cut back to the cameras just so that we've got the timing tower. So Sokolov is 7 seconds away from Stuart Packham, who I don't know if he'd have thought he was going to win this race, but I think he'll be chuffed to bits if he does. Hatton and Chapman are the closest fight outside of Van Buren and Hartle Toby. Well, it was, and then Van Buren is now miles away from Hartle Toby. Not sure what's gone on there. Penders can see the 2 squabbling in front of him. That gap is 3.6 seconds. Danny Zoutenbayer is doing really well for his first race back in the new year. And then if I look at Howard Dunn at the moment, he's in 7th position, and that is going to just continue a trend of top 10 finishes that he's been getting in the second half of the championship, really, since round 9. He's been doing quite strongly, so Howard Dunn just continuing this good level of form, which is really positive to see. Another driver, the South African, who has had a couple of 4th places. He's not yet reached the promised land of a podium, which is what Hatton is desperately attempting to do. As it stands in the championship, just in terms of going into this race, Packham was 4 points clear of Chapman. Excuse me, massive apologies for that. But if things were to finish as they are, Stewart would effectively double that gap. He'd be 8 points in front of Chapman. Now, if that was 7 points, and with double points on offer, that opens the door a little bit more. It's going to be unlikely for them to catch up to 2nd and 1st place now, unless they have an incident themselves. But you can see that Chapman really wants to find a way through here. That 3rd potential championship could be heading his way, but right now he's got a McLaren 720 GTS Evo shaped hole in front of him that he has to navigate a way through. It is a challenge. It is a huge challenge for the Aston Martin, but it's a big challenge for Hatton as well. And as I said before, I'm not going to say anything in particular about Hatton. Commentator's curse is real, as a lot of people who are watching will attest to. I don't want to do that to any of the drivers tonight. It's been a difficult one, and a number of retirements due to all sorts of issues. But Hatton moving the car around, just trying to make sure that he gets himself the best defensive lines possible. You can see that Using the... Oh, Chapman just getting away with that. He's very lucky. I've got to say that he hit a flatter part of the curb there, because I've seen it before where cars go over the curbs and they just get dragged along and off the circuit. But Chapman making that mistake. It's closed the gap up with Dennis Penders. That's now 2.2 seconds. He can see them. And then he runs a little bit deep at the final corner, which is, again, commentator's curse. Which is bringing Danny Zoutenbayer right back into it as well. And that was not... It was not on my card for this evening for Danny Zoutenbayer to be in with an outside shot of the podium, considering he's probably not raced for at least a month on the game. And sure enough, he runs wide at turn 1, so every time I cut towards somebody, something goes wrong. But Chapman was right in the rear diffuser of the 55 just then. 13.5 minutes remaining in this race. Sokolov is not making any inroads on the race leader. Packham is doing a brilliant job in the lead, and he just needs to continue this up for the next few laps. There aren't many laps remaining. It takes 90 seconds to complete, well, just over 90 seconds to complete a lap around this circuit. Which gives us roughly 8 laps remaining. But Hatton was a little bit wide through the right-hander, and he's going to have to go extremely defensive into turn 14. That's a really nice line, that, from Chapman. He's right under the rear spoiler of the McLaren. Oh, this is going to get a bit awkward with the back marker of Warner, but thankfully they're able to survive. Chapman's got a little bit more overspeed, but he's on the outside line for turn 1, and the car's front end just washes mid-corner, and that forced him out wide. And even though Chapman's down the inside here at turn 2, he's not really close enough to make a lunge just yet, or is he? He comes into turn 3, unorthodox place to overtake at 4, but not impossible. He stays in behind for now. And Hatton will be wishing everything possible for these laps to go as quickly as he possibly can. He's desperate to hang on. But Dennis Penders will be thinking, keep fighting. We want more laps so we can catch up. And I think even Zoutenbayer will be thinking the same thing, because those two have really closed up on this fight for third position. In fact, I think we can ride on board with Penders from here on in, and I can tell you the action in front of us we can see. And I feel that Penders and Zoutenbayer, they also got fresh tyres on their car. And I think that's worked to their advantage. It's pulling them back to this fight, which I don't think either of them would have expected, but there we are. Oh, Chapman's got it wrong! He's gone off the road! Can he get back on the circuit in front of Penders? No! What did I say earlier on? I've seen cars get sucked off the road thanks to the curbs, and sure enough, Chapman bottomed out, and off the track he went, and Dennis Penders, unbelievably, has moved into 4th position. Wow. Well, I said before, Penders was just doing what he does best, being Mr. Consistent, and he's up to 4th place. And there's 10 minutes remaining. And now we've got a new situation where Dennis Penders is looking for his 2nd ever podium in ACC Race Nation, and we've got Dan Hatton looking for his 1st. It just reminds me of the time when we went to Paul Ricard earlier in the season, and Penders was fighting for podiums back at that point. It was a wild race that day. We had a couple of cars going off the circuit during the race, and we ended up having a mad dash in the final half of the race to get a race winner. And this is throwing up another barnstormer of a result, for not least just for Stuart Packham, but for the podium fight. I mean, it's one thing that, you know, Hatton has been knocking on the door of all season long to get a podium. But for Penders to be up there and completely on merit as well, that's a big step forward for the Belgian. It's really good to see him right up at the front. And Chapman must be thinking to himself, oh boy, that gap's not 8 points anymore. That's going to be 9. That'll give Stuart Packham a little bit more of a buffer going into the final race of the season. If my mathematics are correct, which they usually typically are, Stuart would have to make sure that he finishes in 7th place to win the championship. As it stands, there's still less than 10 minutes to go. It can all change from here, but Hatton will be relieved. He's still got a very quick Ferrari behind him in the form of the 103, but that gap is not bumper to bumper. That gap is about a second at the minute. Tony Manley's on for a really positive result in 8th place. Howard Dunn in 7th. Hartle-Toby, I think, will just be happy to be inside the top 10. Van Buren's re-caught him up though. He's less than 3 seconds behind. Sokolov's gap to Stuart Packham has remained the same in this stint. It's 6.2 seconds. Hasn't particularly changed since he got into 2nd place. But we ride on board with the Belgian of Dennis Penders. He is the man that could stop Dan Hatton from getting that first podium. They matched lap times. Chapman was quicker than the pair of them on that last lap. Zoutenbayer was a little bit slower. So I think for Danny, unless there's more shenanigans in front of him from these 3 cars, I don't feel he's going to get up to the back of this group. But for Penders, I don't know if Penders will have expected to have been in this position. I think he would have been happy with qualifying. He had a really good race stint earlier. When the first pit stops were happening, he was 5 seconds, I think, off the leading quartet. It's been a really understated drive from this man. But we've got 7 minutes to go, and can he score a 2nd podium of the season? That is the main fight now. Forget everything else. Forget anyone battling over 8th or 9th place. These are the 3 drivers that we're watching. Hatton, Penders, Chapman, all in one shot, man. 6 minutes and 33 seconds remaining in this race. 33 laps gone. We're going to move on to lap 34. And with my estimations, that puts us at 3 or 4 laps, depending on when Stuart Packham went across the line earlier. So 3 or 4 laps to go. A little bit quicker on that last lap from Penders by 1/10 of a second. Chapman was quicker by 4 tenths though. So Chapman now will be thinking, I've got to try and find my way past another car. But the thing is that Penders is not the easiest driver to overtake. He'll race fairly, but he will put up a fight. And I think at this point in the race, he's definitely going to put up a fight. So stay tuned, everyone. Strap yourselves in, because this is going to be an incredibly tense final 5.5 minutes. Giving myself a moment there just to collect everything together, but Chapman, he was there, he was looking. He's going to have to really look hard. He's going to have to surprise Penders, I think, to go through here, unless his Aston has got a bit of a straight line advantage. But what Hatton will be hoping for is that these 2 fight behind him, just to give him a little bit more of a breather, as the timer ticks over to 4 minutes and 44 seconds. I effectively 3, maybe 4 laps to go, depending on when Packham cross the line. Into the left-hander at turn 1. That Aston looking very strong in this first part of the course as they go down through the gears into the left-hander at turn 2. It's a flick of the wrist at turn 3, but you've got to spot your braking zone at turn 4. Difficult corner to do so. It's a back marker in front of Hatton, who gets right out of the way. That's Byford Route moving to the right hand side of the circuit. Ooh, a little bit of oversteer for the Aston through the left-hander. No real harm done at turn 6, but as they come into turn 8, that gap 0.3 of a second. In the last few laps, Sokolov has been catching Stuart Packham just whilst we've been watching that. It's down to 5 seconds, but I wonder if Packham is just backing off now. Into the double right-hander at turns 10 and 11. And then into the corner that has been catching out so many drivers this evening. Champi Herreros at turn 12. Over the curbs they go. It's long left-hander, but Chapman not in a position to try and mount an attack on Penders, even though the Ferrari in front run a touch wide. But again, no harm done for the Ferrari driver. He's just running his race. Oh, look at the braking, the closing in the braking zone. But Hatton went wide then, just as I was watching that. Hatton ran very deep into turn 1, and less than 3 minutes to go. Hatton's little mistake has just brought his attentions back towards Dennis Penders. And Hatton will be thinking, oh no, I just need to get to the end, I'm so close. It would be a mighty achievement if he can pull it off, but Chapman and Penders are waiting for blood. They can sniff an opportunity. Looking plausible. Penders having a little twitch under the brakes, running a little bit wide. A little bit of mid-corner understeer in that 296 GT3 in front of us. He's just struggling with those progressive corners. You can see again, it's just there. It's in that braking phase, just at the last point. It's just the car washes out a little bit. Penders flicks the car into the right-hander. Through the left. We'll have 2 laps remaining after this one. Packham has crossed the line with 1:50 to go. Chapman's right there. But that's a good exit from the Ferrari. And the 103 will continue to hang on. Closing speed coming down. Oh, Penders is wide. This is a chance for the Aston Martin to go through at turn 2. Brakes a little bit later than Penders, and through goes the championship protagonist into 4th place. Big move for the title, that, to be fair. That is a big overtake for Chapman. That'll reduce that gap from 8 points. Well, from 9 points to 8. It means Packham will need to finish, I believe, in 6th place to win the championship. I haven't looked at the race victories situation. In fact, it would be incredibly. It would be Packham's first race win of the season. That is incredible, actually, with less than a minute to go. I'm just going to fire over to the external camera. Packham just coming around the final corner now to begin his last lap of the race. Over the line he goes. There's confirmation from race control. The final lap. There's Sokolov just in the background. He's stalked Chapman today, but he's not been quite close enough to get past him. And then this is the tense fight. This is it. This is the final lap. And it'll be the longest lap of his life for Dan Hatton. In the 55, he's got Chapman trying to find another point to haul him into contention properly for the Drivers' Championship. Penders is in 5th position. He'll be there to pick up the pieces if anything goes wrong. Danny's out and by his 6th. Everybody else, they're not really in contention in the nicest way possible. They are quite far away. But on board, with the triple one as they go into the double right-handers. He's not quite close enough yet. Just watching the big Bentley on the track map. He's okay at the moment. He's just going to go around turns 10 and 11. And we'll cut back to Packham in a moment as we approach a little bit earlier on in the lap for Hatton. He's at turn 8 now, going through the left-hander. He's got one maybe surprise option before the final corner. Does Chappers. He's looking, but he's not quite close enough. I am going to cut back just momentarily to Stuart Packham, who takes his first win of the season and a step towards the driver's crown. It's a victory for Packham. It's Sokolov in second. Can this happen? Is this really happening? Chapman trying his luck. He's trying everything at the final corner, but I don't think he's going to be close enough. Take a bow. It's happened in 2026. Dan Hatton is a podium finisher in ACC Race Nation at long last. It's been overdue, but what a drive and what a strategical decision to put himself into contention. He'll be delighted with that. Mark Chapman, a great attempt to try and force the issue to get through. In the end, fourth is the best he can do, but it will give him a shot at the championship finale next week. Dennis Penders, brilliant drive from Dennis Penders to finish in 5th position. Danny Zaltenbayer, I think he's had a great drive, a great comeback drive considering he's not raced for over a month. 6th for him. Howard Dunn we're going to cut to as he rounds the final corner. That's another good, strong position for the South African to come home in 7th position. And Tony Manley will be the last driver on the lead lap. Fair play to Manley with that. He's going to come home in 8th place. So let's run through these provisional race results. Stuart Packham takes one big leap towards the championship with the first win of his season 11. He won by 4.6 seconds from Tony Sokolov, who is making a claim for 4th in the drivers' standings. Dan Hatton, his first podium in the championship after a brilliant defensive drive for himself from not just Mark Chapman in 4th, but briefly Dennis Penders in 5th. Danny Zaltenbayer in 6th. Howard Dunn in 7th, with Tony Manley on the lead lap in 8th. Hartle Toby will be happy with 9th place, I'm sure, considering the disadvantages he had in the Mustang. And Van Buren in 10th place, thinking what might have been. But sadly, I think that might just, realistically, if no problems happen next week, take him away from the championship fight. Liam Watkinson is 11th, with Jacob Byford-Rue in 12th. Fabio Matt is 13th, and well done to Joe Warner for finishing in 14th place. Well done to all of our drivers who finished this evening. Sadly, we had retirements from Michael van der Waal. What could have been for him this evening had he have not had that incident earlier in the race? Josh Wellbeloved, sorry to Josh, Rich Jarram, Sebastian Berger, and Ross Harris, who I didn't actually see. He must have got into the lobby late, but he is, I would imagine he's going to be classified as a non-starter, a DNS. Well, Jacob Byford-Rue saying he'll take P12. Of course you will, Sunshine. I think that was a solid drive from yourself, and you did a good shift. And if I'm right in saying for yourself, I believe that's equalled your best result of the season. So well done, Jacob. That's a cracking effort for you to finish in 12th place. But that is all from us here at ACC Race Nation this evening. Round 14 has been tense, intense, but it hasn't had any pretense. It has been outstanding. Next week is the season finale at the Nürburgring Nordschleife 24-hour layout, and it'll be a 2-hour race with double points on offer, which could shape this championship. What a story we're going to have next week. Who will win the championship? Who will win the race? Who might even secure another first podium like we've had this evening? But I've been Jack Millington, your commentator on Season 11 GT3 here with ACC Race Nation. And wherever you might be in the big wide world, thank you so much for watching and have a wonderful time. And get ready, next week's coming.